So, welcome all to the Back in the Gap podcast. I am Joey, joined by my co-hosts Travis and Josh, and we are about to get into a topic of high controversy.
This is true.
Mm.
We've been discussing this for 15, 20 minutes before we hit record.
I know.
And we were just ultimately like, okay, we need to hit record and get this.
This is not even a discussion that just happened right now. This is one we've had multiple times.
This is something that we've talked about a lot throughout our friendship, and that is we're entitling this episode "The Potential Dangers of Church Camps / Retreats." I think an alternate title may be "What is the role of a church camp / retreat?" And what we're talking about here is, for us, growing up in student ministry, we went to different church camps. Like, we didn't go to the same camp every year, right? We went to four main camps, and we're not going to name any names here. We had to clarify off camera. We went to 3 camps and a mission trip. We can get into semantics on that.
Sure.
But the point is, we kind of got a good variety of what different organizations were doing and how they were structuring things, what their goals were, and what how they went about doing those things, right? And when I say goals, I mean there were certain camps that were focused on salvations. There were certain camps that were focused on edification. There were certain camps that were focused on just really maybe less so edification in terms of encouragement, but more like spiritual growth. Like, we're just going to hit you with a lot of learning, right? And so through all of these, I think that we kind of have different opinions on what the role of these camps should be. And for those goals, how they should go about doing it. And what we're also including in here retreats. Now, all of us have been to only our church's retreats.
Yeah.
For students, young adult, men's. And so there's going to be less discussion because
it's kind of subjective to just our church.
Yeah, it's our church.
In the way that they structure it.
And we've only seen how our church does it.
Yeah.
But for camps, we went to different kinds. So let's kind of get into it. I think that kind of where we normally start our discussion is Cry Night. And so let's kind of define what Cry Night looks like. And for one of the church camps that we went to for 3 years, he's doing the math in his head.
You mean 2?
2 years and the mission trip version of that camp.
Okay. Anyway,
the way this camp was structured, it was definitely geared so toward salvations above all else was kind of their goal. And so Cry Night was essentially, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, and you have your worship set, your sermon, and it kind of all builds around Thursday night. And Thursday night was colloquially known as Cry Night, because it basically put all of the students in an environment where they wanted kids to make decisions.
Yep.
And they wanted kids to be emotional in order to make those decisions. And so it would not be a typical worship and sermon set. You might have a couple of slower songs, but then instead of a sermon, it was, okay, here's these walls. You're going to go out with an expo marker and write down answers to these really hard-hitting questions on these walls. And there's going to be really somber, sad music. Everyone's kind of huddled together around one another. There's these different stations. And that was kind of how these Thursday nights were set up. And for me personally, I took issue to that. I disagreed with what was going on. I do want to clarify here, I don't think that there was any malicious intent from the directors of this camp, or for more on the corporate side, like the people who were running this camp. I don't think that they were trying to be malicious in this. But I'm of the opinion that getting someone in a super emotional, vulnerable state and then really encouraging them to make a decision for Christ is a bad idea, because what you have done is you have cared so much about the decision and you have not set them up for spiritual growth moving forward. And with a lot of these camps, it was, Thursday night's Cry Night. You made a decision. That's great. Friday night, we're going to do the mass mess. We're going to do the relay race. We're going to do the organized mass chaos, whatever it is. And then you go home. And I kind of felt that really soured my view on some of these camps, because you've built up to this decision. You said, all right, good job, leave. And I think that that's not the role that church camp should play, because you don't know what soil that seed is just sprouted out of, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not equipping these people to continue to grow in the faith, well, they're just going to get back home, live out their normal life, and then they're going to get saved again next year. That was something that we saw somewhat a decent bit, was like, man, it's crazy. It's your fourth time getting saved. I'm really happy for you. But it's hard for me to respect that decision because I don't know your heart. And based on the past, I don't know if this is something genuine. And I hope that it is, but man, this is just not where I see this going, you know? So that's kind of my introduction as to what Cry Night is, and we'll kind of discuss that because Josh has a very differing view.
Is it my turn?
To what that night entailed.
I've been itching.
I've seen you over there.
All right, go ahead.
So my opinion of what Cry Night is, and more or less what it's supposed to be, is kind of the accumulation throughout the entire week, the leading up from the beginning of the week to this point, like you said, usually on Thursday night, which is towards the end of the week. We usually go home on, was it Friday or Saturday that we went home?
It was normally Saturday morning you would go home.
Yeah, Saturday morning we'd pack up and leave. So Thursday night was one of the last nights that we would have this worship type setting. So in my mind, Cry Night was meant to be like this build-up where you've been invested in this entire week, and then you come to this point where everything that you've been taught, everyone who's invested in you, kind of leads up to this one moment. And I don't see a world where it's possible for someone to make it, especially for teenage people, to make a decision like that without like snot and tears coming out every part of your face, right? Like it, and for a lot of those kids, it's a big decision. A lot of it is cultural, but you have some of those kids, they come from very harmful homes. They come from a lot of different walks of life, and it's a very hard decision for them to come to a realization that there is a God out there that loves them. It's gonna get emotional no matter what you do. I don't know. For me, I don't think there's anything wrong with it being emotional. As far as the follow-up afterwards, I don't think that's for the camp to, I don't think that's the camp's responsibility. I think that's the responsibility of the church that brought them there. I think that's the responsibility of the youth pastor and the older students in that youth group to follow up afterward and make sure they're still being invested in, because ultimately that's going to where they're going to continue to go, right? Camp may be like a 6-hour drive for them. Other churches might be even further away from that in other directions. If they're going to be continued to be invested anywhere, it's going to be in the church that brought them to camp. It's going to be in that group of young people that brought them to camp. So ultimately, that follow-up, that lead-up after that important decision should be in the hands of responsible student pastors, responsible leaders of local churches. So that's my take on Cry Night. I think that it's important. I don't think that it's possible to come to those kind of decisions without being emotional. I don't think it's possible to come to a decision that there's a God out there who loves you, no matter what you've done and no matter what life circumstance you come from. I don't think it's possible to have that realization without some emotions following.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Josh, because I think you're absolutely right. That is not a decision that you can make on pure logic, right? Yeah. I think that apologetics are important. Defending the Bible is important in terms of, like, this is something that we can trust is reliable and consistent across time.
Yeah.
But if all you have is head knowledge, you can't make a decision.
Right.
And so I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to pose you this. I think that the decision making itself is what should spur up emotions.
Sure.
And the problem that I have is that what they're doing is they're saying, well, we can bring you the emotions. Now you make the decision. Mm. And I think that might be a little backwards. And I've never thought about it that way until you just brought that point up. But I think that that's kind of where my issue lies, is that, that is an emotional decision, but these emotions are artificial and brought about by the environment you're in,
Sure,
not by the decision you might be making.
Sure, and I think you kind of have to, whenever you're in a leadership position like that, let's say you're organizing a camp and you're trying to set up the worship set or how things are going to look, how things are going to appear, whether you're going to have like the fog lights and all this kind of stuff, you know, you have to discern what is going to be emotionally manipulative and what is leading people through the Spirit. I think there's a difference between, you know, just welling up emotions inside somebody and leading somebody spiritually through worship. I think it's very important to lead people spiritually through worship. I think we've witnessed that in the past through our most recent camps that we've gone through. I think it's very, very cool to look out and see a band who genuinely loves doing worship and seeing all of these young people being influenced by the Spirit of those leaders. Because if you're a believer, you're going to be a Christian, right? You're going to have the Holy Spirit. And for a lot of those kids that come to camp, they're going to have that as well. That Spirit unifies us. That Spirit brings us together. You know, we were talking about a passage earlier across the street with our students, talking about how, I think it was in John chapter 17, talking about how it was Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was praying for future believers in him as well as the current believers. He was saying how he desires for them all to be one, how Jesus and the Father are one, and how we and Jesus are one. Therefore, we are all one. And through the Holy Spirit, we have that oneness. Through that oneness, we experience oneness in worship. We experience this communion, which also gets emotional. It's an incredible thing to see a bunch of people in a room agreeing together in worship. That gets emotional. I think that is an incredible thing to see. I think that is great. I think that is what, quote-unquote, Cry Night should be geared toward, is that kind of emotion that wells up through the Spirit of God. Sure, emotional manipulation through just the sheer process of being like, playing some somber music. All right, go out there with your tears. I don't think that that's the right approach, sure, but I don't think it's possible to go throughout a week of camp and not have that kind of night where you sort of accumulate everything that you've brought up throughout the week of camp together into this one focal point and then make a decision from there.
See, I'm going to have to... Oh, gosh. See, I don't entirely disagree.
Sure.
See, that's the issue here is, like, it's hard for me to be like, I completely disagree or completely understand because, like, there are multiple variables which I agree with and disagree with.
That's fine.
And I guess for me, the main thing about it is, I guess for this camp that we were talking about earlier, this previous camp we went to, the main issue I took care of with it was the fact that it was very like, here's your station, here's your next station, here's your next station, here's your next station. It was very like, it was very much so like putting the blinders on, having you focus on this thing we want you to focus on, and it was just like leading you down this path that you may not even be like fully contemplating on your own. And so, like, you're building off of the emotions around you and the emotions of the thing that is set up. And, like, these emotions may just be a mimicry of what's around you and not a genuine emotion within yourself.
Are you talking about the whiteboard thing?
I'm not necessarily just with that, but, like, a lot of these, like, kind of things.
Yeah.
Like, these very, very, like, set up, kind of somber, task-oriented things.
Gotcha.
Tend to be very, very like Joey said earlier, we are giving you the emotions, and so it seems to be more of like, this is the appropriate, like, people have this response because this is the appropriate response you're supposed to have, not necessarily the response that you may actually be feeling or the response that you're actually coming to on your own. And so that's also, I know we've had this discussion with, like, worship as well.
Yeah.
Because, like, I myself can get very caught up in, or I myself am a very, like, distractive person. Like, I prefer sitting closer up front because if I sit further back, I'm going to be looking at everybody. And for you, it makes sense because you mentioned, like, you are further encouraged through the spirit of worship by seeing other people worshiping.
Yeah.
But for me, I guess it's hard for me to focus on God at that point in time. I'm just focusing on the people themselves. Like, oh, this person is having this response.
Like individuals.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, also, I guess whenever you look at them, you see the Spirit moving. And so what I look at them, I just see humanity. I just see like the human themselves. I don't necessarily perceive the same thing you do. And I guess that's just more of an individual thing. But like for me, that manifested in having more of the opinion of like, okay, worship shouldn't be distractive. It also shouldn't be trying to lay out the emotions for you, or like lay out the energy level for you, or lay out that thing. You should have that. And I understand for someone who may not, be in a very strong point spiritually, it may be very, very difficult for them to actually get into the full spirit of worship. However, I think people can get caught up in mimicking what is around them.
Sure. And
rather than like genuinely having that experience themselves. And I guess I'm just saying that like things and decisions should be made to try and minimize mimicry and kind of like the mob mentality of these things, and make sure that it's more of an individual choice rather than just like something that people are responding to based off of the environment and the people around them. And it's more of an external thing and an internal thing.
yeah, and that's why you have worship leaders, right? You have people that are supposed to direct that experience for them, because like you said, not everybody's going to be as spiritually in tune as, maybe somebody sitting next to you, which is why you have people that are there. They're just supposed to guide you through that process, and some are better at it than others. But yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I think that something you mentioned was a lot of the mimicking others, and I think that that's something that camps that we've been to in more recent times do a very good job of like, hey, if you need to make a decision, all the leaders are in the back.
Yep.
Go talk to them one-on-one. Whereas some of these camps that I disagree with their methods a little bit. It's like, make a decision right here in front of everybody while you're crying. Because once again, I think that feeds into almost like a fear of missing out type mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, you see, well, this person and this person's making a decision. I guess I should do that, and it's really emotional. But no, I think that I agree with a lot of what you said, Travis. And I think that having that distinction in worship is important, and having a lot of it does come down to good leadership, right? Because I don't. Once again, I want to reiterate that none of us think that anyone has been malicious across time.
No.
But just having someone who's going to be more experienced and know how to maybe direct students' worship, how to get them to let go of whatever they're thinking of, to surrender their heart fully to God through worship, right? Is important. You're smirking a little bit. You have a point?
The band that we've had the past couple of camps have been awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They've been really good at that.
Love that band.
I think it's technically past 3, right?
They've been doing it since at least 2015.
I hadn't been to the past 3, so I can't say.
Oh.
They've been doing it since at least 2015 at that camp.
Really?
Yeah.
So technically 4
2015
now, right?
was my first camp. Travis, I don't know how you got from 2015 to 2023 with only 4 years.
Well, we didn't go in 2015.
Okay, we did. I was there. Y'all were not students. Here's the point. If they were there then and they're there now,
I didn't realize.
we're presuming they fill in the spots.
I was not thinking 2015.
Okay.
Anyway.
We're getting off topic. But so I think that we've kind of come to a place of maybe not agreement, but we all understand where we're at.
Yeah.
And I think there are some points that we do actually agree on, but because of semantics, we disagree.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. And I think that where we're at is good. But something we were talking about before the podcast that I'm very interested to dive into. I said, and I'll stand behind this, I don't think the point of church camp should be salvations. I don't think that should be the goal. And Josh, you seem to vehemently
I
disagree with me.
completely and utterly disagree with that.
I'll let you go first and explain why you think it should be about salvations.
Well, if you're gonna do a large group event like that, right? You know, past camp we had like what 700 kids, maybe less than that.
Honestly, I could spit out a number, but I have genuinely no clue.
General, we've had there's typically hundreds of kids that come to
Yes.
this camp, right? There is no way on earth every single one of those kids has come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ.
I agree.
If camp is not directed towards bringing those kids to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, it is worthless, and there's no point in doing it. You can get edification for those who do have a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, but why do we do camp if it's not to bring those kids away from hell? Because the reality is, if they do not come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, which we have an opportunity to do there, they are going to hell, period. And we have an opportunity to change that. And that's the most important thing we can do there if we have kids there that have not come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. So if we have that opportunity, that means that needs to be the main focal point of camp. And there's literally nothing you could say that would make me change my mind.
You see,
I don't think I will change your mind. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I've got a very good point right now. Oh, at least I think it's a good point. I could be wrong. But, Josh, all right, so you just mentioned that these kids, if they don't accept Christ, will be going to hell.
Yes.
However, I don't, and I realized, I know you didn't mean it like this, but, I mean, hell is not, like, not going to hell is not the point of salvation. The point of salvation is to foster and gain a relationship with our Father. And so,
Same difference.
No.
it's not. It's a. See, salvation is not just the the avoiding of hell.
Yes.
It is the it's mainly the fostering and gaining the relationship with our Father. And yes, gaining a relationship with our Father does keep us away from that place, but getting the salvation, the point of salvation is not just to not go to hell.
It's a big part of it, though.
It is a big part. It is not the main point, though. And I think, like, that's where kind of, I guess, where we're coming from, me and Joey, I think.
Okay, so how does
Is
that
it-
discredit the point that I made?
Well, I'm not saying it discredit it. I'm just saying, like, the fostering of a relationship with our Father, that is the point of camp, in my opinion. However, whatever that may look like, we could have no kids come to know Jesus Christ, but those who do are just have that much more of a fostering and that are that much closer with their Lord. I think that is infinitely valuable. Just because no one gets saved does not mean that the camp is worthless.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not.
It
I think
does.
that's wild, man.
I think any growth towards
If you're, here's my opinion. If you're going to have something that is specifically for fostering the relationships of people who already know Jesus Christ, it needs to be on a much smaller scale.
I'm not saying that's the only goal.
Why?
Because then you're able to get much deeper and more intimate with those individual people, understand what their needs are, understand what they need to do in order to foster and grow that relationship more. If you're organizing a group, 600-700 kids, there is no way on earth that all of them are going to have, like I said before, there's no way on earth that all of them are going to have that relationship with God to begin with that you're talking about. That's so important. If they don't have that relationship with Christ, if they don't have that relationship with the Father, that needs to be the first priority, is making sure that they do have that relationship. Otherwise, there is no point in doing it.
Which is, okay, I'm going to jump off two things you said. One, you said that if you want to have something that is to build up believers,
Sure.
you want to have edification, you want to build up those who are already saved.
Yeah.
It should be on a smaller scale so you're able to know them more personally and have, where are they struggling? How can we reach specific needs?
Correct.
And I would say all of that, but for the non-believers. I think that has to be such a more personal relationship. I don't think that the environment for that is this corporate huge event.
And I'm not saying it necessarily has to be either, but if you are going to have a corporate huge event, I'm just saying it can't be specifically for people who are already believers.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that, conversions, I think in general, we misunderstand the Great Commission. It's not about conversions. It's about making disciples. You can convince anybody to say a prayer.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
And if all you've done is convince them to do a thing, someone else can convince them right out of it.
Sure, but that's not a true conversion then.
No.
But I think that's the point.
But I want to make a distinction about my language.
Sure.
When I say that a church camp is only focused on salvations or only focused on conversions, I mean they're only focused on a kid making a decision like that.
Not whether it's
making a decision regardless of how they follow through.
Gotcha. So you're saying that they're focused on making sure the kid says the right words in the prayer and not necessarily having a true relationship.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
I do want to clarify that because there's no way for them to know if it was a true conversion, right? So let me jump into another thing you said. You said, oh no, I missed it. I don't know what you said, but I remember what I was going to say in response to it. One thing that I really appreciated about the most recent camp that we went to,
yeah,
and this is the first year that I remember them doing it in this way. Monday night, they gave the gospel presentation.
Yeah.
The first night we're there, they said, if you need to get saved, go do that now.
Yeah.
Right now. And then we have the whole rest of the week to build you up and prepare you and disciple you.
Yeah.
Not that discipleship can happen in a week. However, I think that is a much better model for those who are not believers. They're just going with a friend. That is such a better model, in my mind at least, where once you're done with the week, you've made the decision and then you have all these tools.
Sure.
Whereas with the other one, we've built up to this decision and then there's no time to build further upon it. And you're going home. And it's at that point, it's just left to the churches, which you would say is their responsibility.
Yes.
And I'm in agreement because discipleship does have to be a much longer thing. But where I disagree on, I don't think that a camp should be necessarily concerned as their top priority. How many sinners' prayers can we get out this week, boys? How many kids can we get to say that they're going to make a decision? I think that's a priority, but much further than that is building up the kids. Because what you have is 700 kids that went to camp and thousands who didn't.
Sure.
And so you have this event where you have people who are to some extent churched. There are a handful who have never experienced anything church-wise and are just at camp. But a lot of your kids are either saved or they've been to church and they're kind of involved, or like their parents go to this church. Most of the kids are a part of the visible church, if you will.
Sure.
Right?
The cultural church.
Yes. But also some are in the church in a more
Spiritual
sense.
Yeah.
You have a whole week to pour in these kids, build them up, prepare them to then go out to the world.
Sure.
I'm not going to be able to reach some high school kid I don't know. I'm not just going to be able to waltz up to our local high school and be like, hey, kids, you guys want to hear the gospel? Like, I can't just, do that.
Sure.
That's an environment where, I'm just not a part of anymore, right? But you have all these high school kids who can be built up and edified, and they have all this experience. They have all these connections. One thing I like about our camp that we go to these days is it's with other churches within the area.
Yeah.
So these are not connections that you're just going to lose. These connections could actually stay and build each other up.
Like the family.
then-
Sorry.
I'm not done.
Sorry.
I'm not done.
Then there is action afterwards.
Yeah.
It's not camp staff is fulfilling the Great Commission to the 100 or so odd kids that showed up and aren't saved. It's you've got an army of 600 kids who are now ready to go fulfill the Great Commission in their lives. And I think that that is more important. And that is where I see the role of church camp.
Interesting.
And so I'll let you respond to that.
So I do like what you said about the community that brought. I was just gonna say, the family group that I led at camp this past camp that they still text each other like to this day.
Yeah.
We started a group chat and they still talk to each other, which I think is awesome. But
Very impressive. Which is very impressive.
yeah,
Well,
I
my
was
family group has not had a text.
Yeah.
I was
since
about
we
to send them a
left.
text today. They haven't texted in a while, so I was gonna send them a text today. But yeah, I was gonna say something.
You were saying the community aspect is important and that you can see that within our kids. I was talking about why I think that it's more important to equip students to fulfill the Great Commission rather than camp staff. Just do it.
Sure. So yes, that is a great opportunity to do that. And I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. I think that's a great thing. But I think that's secondary. That is secondary to taking advantage of the opportunity of kids there at that moment, there and now, who do not know Christ. I think that is secondary to build up believers that are already secured in exchange for not giving as much attention to people who do not know Christ.
See, I don't think y'all have kind of gone back and forth a little bit on this, but I don't think there should be any distinction between, okay, there's more attention on those who don't know Christ. There's more attention on those who do. I don't think there should be any distinction on that. I think the attention is on everyone equally. The distinction there should not be a distinction on like, oh, we should put more focus on unbelievers or we should put more focus on believers. I think unbelievers and believers go. I mean, that's just the reality. And that everyone needs to be fostered the same, like equally. Maybe that's why we have a message that's more focused on salvation. That's why we have messages that are more focused on on the commission, things like that. I think that everyone needs to be fostered equally. And that's what I meant earlier by saying that, like, regardless of whether or not you're saved, the goal should be to bring you closer to Christ. Wherever you are, whether you have no relationship with Christ or whether you do, the goal as a whole should just be to bring everyone who's there closer to Christ. And there shouldn't just be, I don't think there should be any like distinctive goal of those who are unbelievers closer to Christ, have a relationship with Christ. Those who are believers are more focused towards the Great Commission. I think all of those things are important, but none of them is more important than the other. They're all equally important.
Okay. So, to clarify, I'm not saying that you should give less attention to building up people who are currently believers, right?
Yeah, and I didn't say
don't know.
you did.
I don't think that
Sounds like that's what you said.
I don't think that camp should be what that's for.
I think he's talking about within the realm of camp.
Yeah, I know.
What?
So
I don't-
Do you agree with him or not?
I think that if you're going to do a large-scale church camp, the main focus should be offering of salvation. Not saying that numbers is something that you should shoot for, not saying that you should go for like the most kids saved ever. If one kid out of like those hundreds of kids that comes, if one kid comes to a knowledge of Jesus Christ throughout that entire week, the entire camp was worth it. All of the money spent, all of the time spent, all of the efforts put into it, all of it was worth it if just one kid comes to say. I'm not saying that numbers is the thing you should shoot for. I'm saying that salvation, period, it should be the number one thing that you should shoot for. If you're wanting to go for discipleship and preparing to go out into the world, I think it should be longer than a week, first off. I think it should be on a smaller scale as well.
See,
But and I'm sorry to cut you off. One thing you said earlier, and I'm going to give you a chance to back out on it if you want. You said if no kid gets saved, it doesn't matter. The whole thing was worthless. I mean, do you still stand on that point? Because I
For
feel
a,
like
for a camp,
for a camp,
for a large scale
Yeah.
camp, I think a lot of it could have been, if you're mainly focusing on just discipleship, then yeah.
Now, I would say, what about if you're focusing on both equally?
If any kids come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, the camp was worth it, I would
Okay,
say.
what if they don't?
Then why have camp?
I'm jumping in your place because you assuming it was because I'm agreeing with Travis in the sense that like you should not ignore those who are not saved, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you should either.
Yeah, if you have spent a week building up believers
Sure.
who were weak in their faith, who are new in their faith, and now they have these new friends who are going to encourage them. They have these new connections. They have a different knowledge they have a different view of the Scripture. They are going to be so much more inclined to then spread the gospel to those that they know. The impact of a camp is not limited to the salvations that happen during those 6 days. It has such a larger impact, right?
Sure.
You think about even our experiences, we would not be, not to say anything, poorly on our student ministry. We were obviously built up in different ways.
Yeah.
But, for me, I had 6 camps. Thank you, COVID. But like 6 years at camp. And I'll say this, I think all of them were encouraging and edifying. I don't think any of them ignored me to focus on decision making. There are things about my life that would be different if I was not able to get that encouragement from those camps. And it might be to the point where I'm weaker in my faith and less apt to share, right? Whereas now I have this experience from these camps, and they've built me up as a believer, and have encouraged me more, and I want to fulfill the Great Commission more.
Yeah.
I think that if you lock camp to the scope of 6 days, and then once camp is over, nothing else matters, sure, salvations are incredibly important. But I mean, I can see in my life the impact that these camps have had on me. These retreats, these mission trips, whatever you want to call them, these different conference event type things where it is this large scale. I think that encouragement and edification, even if I were to yield to your point, I think calling a camp worthless if no one gets saved is kind of crazy.
Okay. I'm going to bring this up again, though. There is no way that you're going to have a large-scale camp like that where you're going to have non-believers. So if you have a large-scale camp like that and your output is no one comes to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, to me that tells you didn't care. To me, that tells you did not care about the kids. If you're having a large-scale camp like this, to me that tells that not enough care was put into ministering to the kids. Because there is no way that you're going to have a large-scale camp like that where unbelievers are coming in. And you can just specifically and intensely focus on discipleship of those who are already believers.
I see what you're saying, and I kind of understand what Josh is saying. Josh is coming from more of like a...
You're coming from a hypothetical point of view. I'm coming from
Josh is saying
realistic
like,
point of view.
statistically that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I also think that's I can't put myself in that frame of mind because I'm sure there has to be a camp somewhere across the nation, somewhere across time, where there were people in charge who genuinely prayed over this event and really put everything they could into this. And maybe there were no salvations at the camp, but the impact of it is so much larger. I think it's dangerous to say that not enough care was put into it. And I am totally dealing with hypotheticals right now. And I do get what you're saying, and I agree to an extent, but I don't personally want to stand behind a statement like that.
Okay.
Interesting.
Can I get my piece now?
Yes.
Anyway, so I feel like each of you are kind of you're making different points about almost like like in supporting those different points entirely differently as well. I understand what Josh is saying. Like I totally understand what he's saying actually. Like once he started to explain it more, I understood more. He's saying like statistically with a camp that large, if absolutely no one like comes to accept Christ, you should really do some self-reflection.
Yeah.
And maybe it was. Maybe there's some outlier way out there that just like happened to be a great leadership and happened to be great thought put into it and it just didn't happen. I think Josh is just saying like, yeah, maybe that could happen. But like I think what Josh is saying is like if that does happen, you should seriously look at the camp and really, really consider things.
Yeah.
And then also, I will say just because that didn't happen doesn't make it worthless because you don't know the seeds that could have been planted. Just because somebody didn't get saved at camp doesn't mean that they won't be a month later once they've been consistently going into church because they've built those relationships with those people in that youth group. In a week, yeah, someone's not going to go from just like completely wishy-washy cultural church member to fired up for Christ and just going and doing the Great Commission. Yeah, no, maybe not. Probably not. Actually, no. But that doesn't mean that week doesn't make so much of an impact on them. Build those relationships with both their peers, leaders, peers from other churches that they may know from school or work or things like that, or just any number of things. The material that they're going through, worship, everything. There's just because someone doesn't come to know Christ doesn't mean that all of that stuff that's going on isn't as important, because it also makes a lasting impact on them whenever they go back, where they're more inclined to engage with their new friends at youth camp, and they're there more and more and more and hear more and more and more, and their relationship with God becomes better and better and better. I think, yes, I understand what you're saying. There needs to be definitely needs to be evidence and fruit of the labor of that camp. But also, I don't think that saying that one thing is more important is the right mindset, because we shouldn't just saying that there is a primary focus means that you're looking at something without looking at the other thing.
Not necessarily.
If just for a moment.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
Yeah,
if something's primary.
Yeah,
No, I'm just saying if something's primary, that means you look at it first, then you look at the other thing.
Yes.
Sure.
Which I don't think is the right approach. I think the right approach is looking at everything as a whole. And I think that our camp does this really well. Everything is built off everything else. Like you go, like the whole day is kind of mapped out in a way that every single, okay, obviously you have free time, but every single thing going on during the day builds off of itself and it rolls off of itself. So it's not just about, salvations. It's that's not the primary goal. The primary goal is whoever you are, whatever you've gone through, whatever you're dealing with, come closer to Christ.
Yeah.
Whether you're unsaved or not. And I think that's the right mindset to have, is not so much, because with that mindset, with the mindset of just reaching those who are unsaved, a lot of people in the church, especially cultural Christians, think that they're saved when they're not. And if the goal is more so about reaching those people who we know are unsaved, those people who, if that's your primary focus and you're putting less attention on those who are saved, then those people who are saved, those people who are holding on with everything they are, to convince, like basically gaslighting themselves into thinking that they're saved. If the primary goal wasn't just to bring you closer to Christ, whoever you are and wherever you are, they may not like come to that point of realization, hey, I can't get closer to Christ because I'm still not willing to repent.
Well, yeah, but that's the main point of it as well. Anybody who is not saved, right? That should be what we're striving for, what we're shooting for. Which I think both of y'all are trying to get to that point as well. But you're thinking more of like a long-term basis than just the week of camp. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the point that y'all are coming from is it is building believers up through camp so that they can be sent out and then bring people to Jesus Christ on their own basis outside of camp. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I
Not
think that
necessarily.
as Christians, for me, I think that as Christians, the Great Commission is our highest calling.
Yeah.
I think
agree.
that the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. Second, love your neighbor as yourself. The Great Commission is not a commandment per se. You have those two, and then if you want to throw in third, right? Like the Great Commission should be a huge focus in our life.
Yeah, and that's part of this. The second greatest is loving your neighbor. In order to love your neighbor, you're going to show him Christ.
And part of it is loving God.
Yeah.
Because Jesus said, if you love me, you'll follow my commandments.
Yeah.
And so I think that if I'm hypothetically leading a camp, I have access to 600 people who are churched to some extent.
Yeah, especially in this
What
culture.
is going to have the biggest eternal impact on the kingdom?
Sure.
In my mind, that is similar to what Travis is saying. We want to bring everyone closer to Christ. We want to build up. We want to encourage. The focus is not on the conversion. It is, yes, let's get you Monday night. Let's have the gospel presentation. If you need to be saved, if you've not come to, salvation in Christ, let's get that over with. That puts it down a little bit. It's way more important than that, obviously. But the focus is to equip you to go out and share with others. If you're not saved, okay, let's handle this, and not end there, but equip you. That's my perspective.
See, I think that if you don't take advantage of that opportunity then and now, where you have those non-believers there, then you're missing out on a big opportunity.
And so
Do you have?
I think that I think we've gotten a little off base.
Yeah, I think so.
And if we go back to the original question that was posed, what are the potential dangers with church camp? Where I'm at is still at a place of comparing these different camps that we've gone to across time. And I think that for a camp that makes the big focus night Thursday, where it gets you emotional to make a decision, I think that has less of an impact on the kingdom than a camp that is going to, yes, worry about salvation, but more so worry about equipping everyone there to go out. You understand what I'm trying to convey here?
I think so. You're saying it's more important to equip the people who are already believers to go out and share the gospel on their own basis.
No. I'm saying it's important to equip everyone.
Okay.
So
okay.
A camp that has
yeah,
the focus on Cry Night
yeah,
is focused on the decision
sure,
and is not focused on the equipping, right?
sure.
It just inherently can't. You can't equip someone who is saved Thursday night on Friday.
Which is why you have the follow-up, right, with the churches.
Yes. However, a camp that is focused on equipping those first, you may see less conversions. You probably will see less conversions in terms of, numbers. However, I think that the conversions that you do see are going to be more real. You're going to see people actually come to a saving knowledge of Christ, not make a decision out of emotions. And when I say that, just clarify from earlier, the decision is emotional, but the emotions come from the decision,
Yeah,
not
I think it all comes down to how it's conducted
Yes,
and
how it's conducted.
what you're focusing. Kind of like
So-
what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we don't want it to be emotional manipulation. you do have to be in the right,
Sure.
environment. But I think that equipping everyone, first of all, those who are unsaved and maybe they're opposed, they're going to see what real Christian community looks like. They're going to see what Christians ought to be doing,
Sure.
and that is going to give them a great perspective of, well, this is who I could be.
Okay.
And also, for those who are saved, they're going to be more equipped to fulfill the Great Commission.
Yeah.
And so,
I think I misunderstood your premise at first. I thought you were saying that you shouldn't worry about reaching those who aren't saved, and that you should solely focus on building up those who are currently saved. I thought that's what your premise was.
but I'll also still give you this. If you don't see a salvation within your 6-day camp, but you still built up those who came, I think that's a great camp.
Yeah.
I think that you're doing great work.
I don't think I can get behind that.
You should celebrate salvations, but I want to phrase this correctly, because I think it is something that is difficult. You should not go in with the expectation of, well, here's our goal number. We're trying to hit this many salvations, and if we don't, it's a failure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it should be that way either.
You are.
No,
You are.
I
Your
know.
goal is 1.
Yeah, sure.
But you're saying what I'm saying you shouldn't do.
Okay.
There
well,
should be no expectation.
There certainly should.
If you have a salvation, that's awesome. If you have multiple, that's awesome. If you don't, but you've still equipped those to go out and spread the gospel, that's awesome.
You absolutely should not go into something like that without having an expectation of, okay, we need to reach people for Christ.
That is the goal.
Yes. And you're saying you shouldn't have that goal.
The goal, it's not just
Josh, not every time
it's
that you
not
have
just the 6 days. It's so much further. You can reach so many more people.
Joe, if I may interject, just
We've
because
been going for an hour, by the way.
I know. No.
just because you have a goal does not mean just because you don't meet a goal doesn't mean that you didn't have the goal in the first place.
Sure,
Because-
but he's saying you shouldn't have the goal to begin with.
No, that's not what he's saying.
That's,
He's saying,
that's what he said.
okay, the goal is to have salvations. The goal isn't to have
The goal is to make disciples. I want to be
Okay.
clear.
Yes. And in that, salvation, that's part of making disciples,
Yes.
but it's not limited to salvations. Making disciples is also includes those people who are lukewarm in the church.
Sure.
And so any improvement on making disciples is a movement in the right direction.
I was trying to find a verse earlier. I promise I was paying attention to you when I was looking down here. I'm trying to find wherever that verse says that there is more celebration among the angels of heaven for one sinner who repents than a believer. I can't remember the exact wording of it. I need to find where that passage is. Let's see.
I know what you're referring to. Okay, it's in Luke chapter 15
Yeah, I found it.
and verse 10. So this is, I'll let you read the verse, kind of introduce it. Where you have a couple of parables here: parable of the lost sheep, parable of the lost coin, and parable of the prodigal son. Which all of these are kind of something was taken away and it's been found, right? Something was lost, it's been found. The prodigal son turns away and then comes back. So if you want to read your verse here.
This isn't the exact one I was looking for, but yeah. It says, just so I tell you, there is joy before the angels of heaven over one sinner who repents. And the whole premise of it is, she had this bag of coins, right? And she lost one. She's trying to find it, and she finds it. And she gets this whole party together, and they have this big celebration. It's great that she has the 10 coins. That's awesome. But there's a big celebration over the one that she found because she did not have it. And I'm saying is far more important to make sure that we secure someone for eternity than to build them up, to build up the ones that already are secured for eternity. Because like I said earlier, if that person's not secured, they're gonna go to hell. They're not gonna have a relationship with the Father. And I'm certain that you believe that too. I'm certain that you believe that that's far more important too. I think what the
I'm
premise.
actually a universalist. Go read Love Wins by Rob Bell.
No.
We're all going to be in
No.
To be
No,
clear,
no.
Joey is
I
not.
absolutely agree with you, Josh. I was being facetious.
I think the angle that you're coming at it from is camp should be utilized to equip people to go out into the world and do that, right?
Yes.
I think the angle that I'm coming from is we should take all means possible to take advantage of that opportunity for those who are not believers there to make sure that we secure them for eternity.
Yeah.
And I think
And at the end of all this, we agree on the same thing. It's important to reach people for Christ. I think we just have different ideas on what camp should be utilized for.
Yeah. And we're all brothers in Christ.
Yeah.
We all worship together. We have no qualms. Travis, I know you had a point, but we have been recording for an hour.
That's true.
And
I
I
am
am
going
going
to
to
be a short point.
Okay, you can have a short point.
Never mind, y'all were talking. I forgot it.
All right.
Thanks.
I would love to revisit this
Yeah.
at another time. I'm not sure when.
Next week. No, I'm just playing.
No, not next week. I
Two-parter.
really enjoyed this conversation. I think that
I want to say I love you guys, and despite how this may have seemed,
No.
I'm not mad at you.
Josh.
I
no.
promise.
Don't say
I
it.
love you.
Don't say the word despite. We can have these discussions because we love each other.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
that's a fair point. If only we had that name still.
Man.
I think that's a great point to bring
Imagine.
up. We can only have these conversations like this because we do love each other.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for the both of you. I love you guys a lot. Are you trying to say something here, or are you just tapping your hand?
No, I'm just tapping my head.
Okay. But yeah, I think that we've at the very least learned a lot about each other's perspectives.
Yeah. And we, at this point, we basically just disagree on semantics.
Yeah. We agree on the end goal. We disagree on the methodology.
Sure.
Right. It's like politics, right? Everyone's trying to get rid of the debt. Democrats more taxes. What's the? It's Republicans less taxes, more. It's politics, baby.
Gosh.
I guess that made me the.
Anyways, that's all we have for today. We are closing out on an hour-long recording. I'm going to try to edit this down.
Probably a little success.
But yeah, I think that we've learned a lot,
Yes.
and I think that that's it. I don't have any other point than that.
I wonder how many clips of my opinions are going to be made.
I've enjoyed this podcast.
Dude,
At the
zero.
Bro, check the social media. We're getting rid of the Josh clips. Oh, no. I had a point. I'm sorry. We would love to hear your responses.
Yes.
If you have somehow suffered through this podcast for this long, please send us a message somewhere. We'd love to know what you think. Maybe something that none of the three of us brought up that's
Yeah.
important.
Because there's definitely other perspectives than what we have.
Absolutely.
There's other things we didn't get to.
There's other
Yeah.
camps that we didn't go to.
Especially considering the fact that we are growing up and have camps in church culture, right? We are in the Bible Belt. There may be other camps, California, that's not in the Bible Belt, and it's very much a lower percentage of Christians, you know?
Even someone who went to one of these camps who wasn't raised Christian.
Yeah.
Right?
That is true.
Anyways,
I know some people close to me like that.
we could close this out for another hour. So that's it. This has been the Back in the Gap podcast. Once again, I'm Joey. This is Travis and Josh, and we will see you all next week.